A Caribbean island paradise, and a volcano wakes after lying dormant for centuries. With the lives of 10,500 people at stake, volcanologists rush to the scene. Then a catastrophic eruption sends an avalanche of red-hot rock and ash cascading down the mountain. In the panic, no one knows how many islanders are dead, or why the volcano took so many by surprise. But one man predicted this event. Why wasn't he listened to? Disasters don't just happen. They're a chain of critical events. Unravel the clues and count down those final seconds from disaster. These people are in the wrong place at the wrong time. A raging inferno of volcanic rock is thundering towards them. They have just seconds to escape certain death. Eastern Caribbean, the island of Montserrat. This tiny island is one of the last remaining outposts of the British Empire. It measures just 16.5 kilometers long by 10 wide, almost the size of the city of Dublin. It's a haven for the rich and famous, and home to air recording studios used by rock and pop stars. The island is celebrated for its natural beauty and tranquil, easygoing lifestyle. 80% of the island's infrastructure lies in the shadow of S3-E13 Hills, a mountain lying 915 meters above sea level that dominates the southern half of the island. Most of the population of 10,500 live and work in the capital, Plymouth, or farm the rich, fertile soil on the mountain slopes. On the northern flank lies the village of Farrell's Yard, home to Delia Pond.
It is a paradise, and because everybody is so friendly towards one another, we never have a care in the world. I guess we are brought up in a way to accept life for what it is.
Delia has lived in Montserrat her entire life and is a mother with 6 children. She rents a small holding where she grows vegetables to sell on the neighboring islands. David Lee is an American missionary who has lived on Montserrat for 15 years. He's also a keen amateur cameraman and has filmed everything from carnivals to local sporting events.
It's off the beaten path. It's the way the Caribbean used to be. The people are genuinely friendly. And we came for a month and checked it out, and it was just like they said, and we never left.
But beneath this tropical Garden of Eden lies a hidden menace. The lush vegetation and productive soil belies a lethal reality. The island is volcanic. Montserrat sits directly on a geological subduction zone. This is one of the most seismically active parts of the planet's crust. The North Atlantic tectonic plate, moving westward, sinks beneath the Caribbean plate. As it descends, it melts, forming magma, which over millennia finds its way to the Earth's surface, creating a string of volcanic islands known as the Lesser Antilles. But Montserrat has shown no signs of major volcanic activity for approximately 370 years. The only evidence of volcanicity are springs hot enough to boil an egg, sprouting from the slopes of S3-E13 Hills. Then, on the 18th of July 1995, everything changes. The islanders hear a deafening noise, similar to the sound of a jet engine, coming from the mountain. Leroy Slim Daly, a local farmer and part-time cab driver, is in Plymouth that day.
People started to realize that there was something happening in the mountains. Most people thought it was a plane, a jet which was passing, but the sound just didn't go away.
Over the next week, the volcano continues its activity. 10,500 people now face a threat they never expected. For David Lee, it's a chance to film a much more dramatic subject.
I decided to document the volcano because I had just taken a sabbatical. We'd been really busy with a lot of things for about 10 years, so I had nothing else to do. I had a nice little camera. The volcano started to erupt. Little did I know that would turn into a vocation.
As news of the volcanic activity breaks worldwide, scientists arrive on the island. The event provides them with a unique opportunity to observe a volcano returning to life after centuries of dormancy. Among them is a recent graduate from Indiana State University. Volcanologist Rob Watts regards the trip as the opportunity of a lifetime.
My dream job is to monitor a volcano, to see a volcano in action, and just incredible, is nature at work.
The scientists immediately set up a temporary observatory in Plymouth and install 9 seismometers around the sides of the volcano. These instruments precisely record the time, duration, and intensity of earthquakes beneath the mountain. The data is transmitted to the observatory and recorded 24 hours a day, plotted onto 4 slowly rotating drums. The system gives the scientists a tantalizing glimpse deep inside Soufriere Hills. They deduce the deafening sound of July the 18th was something called a phreatic eruption, coming from part of an old crater known as Castle Peak. Groundwater, superheated by magma rising deep inside the volcano, evaporated, building a massive head of steam that burst, screaming like a jet engine, through fractures in the rock. The team watch their equipment and wait for the volcano to kick back into life. A month after the initial activity, amateur cameraman David Lee decides to climb to the western edge of the crater, overlooking Castle Peak.
Anybody watching that? Don't be stupid enough to come up here. As I began to walk up to the crater edge, I started to roll the camera. The whole mountain is quivering. It's spewing right now. As I walked out through what was then rainforest, here was this phreatic eruption taking place, and it was just like unbelievable, and stones and pebbles were falling, and it was roaring. I had no idea the whole mountain could blow up. There's no doubt that down below there's magma that wants to come out.
When the volcano emits another deafening blast, David realizes he's in real danger.
I turned and started to hightail down the mountain. Okay, Lord, put my trust and faith in you. You're my refuge and strength in every trouble. That was my last trip up there, folks.
It's clear to David that his adopted home has revealed a new and dangerous character.
Do I look scared? Let me take it and put it on auto. Now do I look scared? I'm not out of here yet. I'm only down about 600 feet. If the whole thing went, wouldn't have a chance up here. The whole top of the mountain was just shivering, up and down under your feet. And you could feel this awesome power underneath vibrating, wanting to come out.
With the volcano showing signs of life, Montserrat is now a ticking time bomb. Red-hot lava deep in the magma chamber is rising rapidly inside Soufriere Hills on the island of Montserrat. But scientists are unsure whether the volcano is entering another, more dangerous phase of activity. Then, a month after the first blast, another larger phreatic eruption fires a cloud of ash, mud, and steam 2 kilometers into the air. The vibration rocks Montserrat. The locals stare nervously at the darkening skies. The southwest of the island is showered in a thick cloud of volcanic dust. Half an hour later, the billowing pall of grey ash clears. As the sun breaks through, it reveals an uncanny scene. The capital, Plymouth, and everything west of S3-E13 Hills is covered in a dense layer of ash. The locals christen the day Ash Monday. Delia Pond remembers the hardship.
You're awake to the ash. You drink water, you're drinking ash. You're eating your food, and you're eating ash.
Fearing the next eruption could be worse, the Montserratian government, with the help of the British military, evacuates 6,000 people from their homes on the slopes of the mountain. The capital, Plymouth, and the surrounding villages empty, as the islanders journey 8 kilometers to hastily organized shelters in the north of the island. But the exodus creates chaos. The north is underdeveloped. Living conditions are basic and soon become squalid.
We were housing schools and churches. You had like 40 to 50 people to a church. You have the young, the old, the Christian, the drunkard, the infant, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The islanders are desperate to return home. And with 80% of Montserrat's infrastructure in the south, many are granted access during the day in order to keep the island functioning. Among them is Delia Pond. Her farm produce is now a vital resource for the islanders camped in the north. Delia and her family tend a plot of land within easy sight of the summit of the volcano. Each day, they take precautions in case of another eruption.
Whenever we get to the farm in the morning, we always turn the vehicle facing towards the road, and we always leave the keys in the car in case of emergency, so we just get in and take off.
Their planned escape route takes them north to the sanctuary of a small hill. On the slopes above Delia's plot, another farmer, Harry Lewis, rents several hectares. He and his wife borrowed money to prepare and plant the land. Like Delia, it's their only livelihood. By September, the islanders are allowed home and start to see a new sight on the horizon. A large mound of rock and ash is growing on the summit of the volcano. This bizarre development confirms the scientists' worst fears. It's known as a lava dome, an unstable bulbous mass formed by successive deposits of thick, viscous lava. If the sides of this lava dome collapse, a deadly cocktail of red-hot rock and ash will cascade down the mountainside in what's called a pyroclastic flow. These lethal avalanches can travel at speeds of up to 160 kilometers per hour. Temperatures at their core can reach 600 to 700 degrees centigrade. They have caused over 40,000 deaths in the last century alone, and are responsible for some of the most deadly disasters in recorded history. It was a pyroclastic flow that incinerated over 28,000 people on the Caribbean island of Martinique in 1902. And most famously, about 2,000 inhabitants of Pompeii in AD 79. Faced with this threat, the islanders return north, and Rob Watts and the scientists keep an eye on the lava dome.
While I was measuring, I could sit and watch the dome and watch the activity, watch big rockfalls fall away from the dome. I just became fascinated with the whole way it was growing.
But 5 months after S3-E13 Hills first erupted, the growth of the lava dome slows. The volcanic activity appears to have quietened. Believing the worst is over, the government allows the evacuees to return to their homes once again. Normal life on the island resumes. But the volcano hasn't finished yet. Nearly 3 months later, it fires its first pyroclastic flow down the eastern slope of the mountain, heading for the coastline. The flow travels just 2 kilometers, and no one is hurt. But it's clear that the volcanic activity is intensifying again. Again, the government orders an evacuation to the north of the island. But the toing and froing creates confusion and anger among the evacuees. An exclusion zone is established in the south of the island. Everything south of Plymouth in the west to the airport in the east is restricted. But no one seems clear about the level of threat the volcano poses, and the roadblocks are not strictly enforced. The islanders still come and go. Then, the island experiences the first explosive magmatic eruption. Ash and red-hot boulders up to 1.5 meters in diameter blast down the eastern flanks of the mountain, destroying the empty village of Long Ground. With the volcanic activity gathering pace, local filmmaker David Lee takes his chances inside the exclusion zone to document the events.
I figured I was doing all the right things, that I understood what was happening on the volcano, and that I knew the best and safest places to be. And I would, one way or another, sneak around the checkpoint to be able to get some of the images that I was able to get, some of the very interesting pyroclastic flows coming down virgin valleys and stuff like that. Really incredible things. I'm in town.
But his bravado soon gets him into serious danger. While driving north from the capital, Plymouth, the volcano erupts violently.
When I looked up, I saw this tremendous black cloud coming across the sky, pitch black.
The blast showers the southwestern side of the island in a thick cloud of ash and mud. In a matter of seconds, day turns to night.
Pitch black with lightning and thunder going everywhere around you, just striking everything on the roads, on the trees, on the houses. That was the most concerned I ever was for my life. It's high noon. Who would ever believe it? Can't see a thing. Can't see a thing. We're trapped in here. It'd be nice to get out of this area alive.
14 minutes later, the ash cloud begins to clear. It's been a lucky escape for David. But the volcano still hasn't finished. It's preparing to blow with a deadly force that will destroy this island paradise. For nearly 2 years, volcanic activity on the Caribbean island of Montserrat has been escalating. The scientists realize this unique opportunity to observe the intensifying activity at close quarters is narrowing. With the pressure growing, the British Geological Survey send a new member of the team. Volcanologist Sue Loughlin, a postgraduate from Durham University in Britain, flies in to help monitor the situation.
I stepped out of the airport and looked up, and there was this great big steaming volcano. Within minutes of arriving, I was watching pyroclastic flows coming down the flanks of the lava dome, so it was quite a sharp introduction to what was going on here.
The lava dome has developed a pointed spire and is now highly unstable. Magma is accumulating near the crater. The scientists install instruments called tilt meters on the slopes of the volcano. These enable the team to track the slightest changes in the size and swelling of the mountain. As pressure from the rising magma increases, the lava dome swells. As the pressure releases, the dome contracts. The team knows that a pyroclastic flow is most likely to occur when the dome begins to deflate. By mid-1997, with a permanent observatory situated north of the volcano, the scientists calculate this cycle is increasing in activity from once every 20 hours to once every 8 to 12 hours. It's clear to the team that S3-E13 is building to a climax. On the 25th of June at 3 in the morning, seismometers at the observatory jump into life. David Lee and his son volunteered to work the night shift monitoring them.
I actually videoed the seismic machine that night, and these hybrid earthquakes were every 50 seconds. I remember saying to my son, you know, it looks like this thing's gonna have a baby. It looks like it's birth pains.
A new injection of molten magma deep inside the volcano is rising rapidly through the chamber, placing the lava dome under enormous pressure. As this pressure increases, injections of magma force themselves into the dome, destabilizing it. By 7 a.m., the seismographs are still recording the activity. But the weather is poor and little can be seen of the volcano through the wet fog. Scientists take to the air to monitor the activity closely. The imminent danger is broadcast to the islanders via the local radio station.
All people inside the exclusion zone, including Bethel, Rams Village, White's Yard, and Spanish Point, should leave immediately.
Delia Pond and her family are among several farmers who are making an early start tending their fields inside the exclusion zone. But Delia leaves her radio in the car, and the mist conceals the mountain directly above her. She has no idea the volcano is about to blow.
1 minute, it's clear, and then it fogs over again. We can see the helicopter going overhead, but we cannot see the mountain.
Near Delia's plot, Harry Lewis and his family also till the soil. As the farmers work, David Lee makes his way to a small hill just north of the volcano to video the ash flows running down the valley. He immediately realizes the danger the farmers are in.
These people here are in about the worst place you could be, because the pyroclastic flows would come over the top of that ridge there before they could even probably get in their cars.
Here they were in the field, and right above them in the valley, there were small pyroclastic flows coming down that same valley.
By 12:45 p.m., seismographs at the observatory record a continuous tremor. Sirens are sounded in Plymouth, and the local radio station begins a continuous update on the developing situation. On the eastern slope of the volcano, Rob Watts is making last-minute adjustments to instruments monitoring the activity. He's in a highly dangerous area.
I guess I got very confident, very happy to be in that area, and I knew I had a fast Jeep with me. We also had the walkie-talkie with a direct link to the observatory.
Rob radios the observatory and is told immediately to head north of the airport, just outside the exclusion zone. It's a call that saves his life. Magma rising rapidly inside the volcano expands the lava dome to its final breaking point. At 12:55 p.m., S3-E13 erupts with terrifying force. David Lee captures the enormous explosion on his camera.
It was bigger than we'd ever seen before. And everybody was like, oh my God, they knew there were people in places they shouldn't be.
I'm gonna move out because it's way over our heads here.
I just grabbed my camera and then made a mad dash around the entire island.
And as you can see, we've had a major explosion.
The eruption ejects an avalanche of superheated gas and rock, cascading down a valley on the northern slopes. It heads towards the farmers still working their fields. As Delia and her family prepare to leave, she opens the gate and catches sight of the white-hot avalanche bearing down on them.
As I put my hand on the gate, it became a routine thing. that I always look back at the mountain and I just see the mountain almost halfway down, coming at us.
James, you have to go right now!
Delia makes a conscious effort to keep calm.
You're looking at something which is danger coming at you. I don't think it is wise to alarm the next person who would then turn around and cause a panic.
But her husband James does panic and immediately takes a left turn out of the gate, heading downhill.
You go up here.
As the volcanic wave gains ground, James fumbles with the gear stick.
For some reason, he cannot get the car in reverse.
They have just seconds to get to high ground.
So then I have to say, all right, don't panic, take your time.
Okay.
And I counted like 1, 2, 3, reverse.
Suddenly, the other farmer, Harry Lewis, drives towards them. In the panic, Harry's family made a run for it. In a bid to rescue them, he drives downhill into the path of the rolling inferno.
We must get out of here.
Hurry up!
Delia and her family drive a kilometer uphill, directly north of the volcano. Looking back, they see the fields they were working just moments ago, engulfed in clouds of red-hot rock and ash.
You're looking into Armageddon because you cannot see anything. Everything is just clouds and smoke.
In the village of Harris, 3 kilometers northeast of Soufriere Hills, cab driver Slim Daly plays pool in the rum shop. Slim is unaware of the drama unfolding. But as the extreme heat from the raging inferno reaches a gas station, the petrol ignites and the building explodes.
We heard a noise. Immediately I realized something was desperately wrong.
Slim sees the white-hot avalanche continue downhill. He runs to his car and heads for higher ground.
Then the darkness started to come over the road in front of me, and the heat, I started to feel the heat. At that point, I was scared, not terrified. I was scared.
On the hilltop, Slim leaves his car to watch the apocalyptic scene below.
And looked at the pyroclastic flows destroying the whole villages, the whole area, right down to very close to the airport.
But as he watches, the volcanic wave changes direction. It is now heading straight for him. To avoid certain death, Slim Daly has just seconds to act. A catastrophic eruption rocks the volcanic island of Montserrat. Within minutes, a red-hot avalanche of rock and ash flows down Soufriere Hills, incinerating everything it touches. Islanders run for their lives. Slim Daly is among them. As Slim heads north, away from the volcano, he warns an elderly man of the imminent danger. It isn't long before they're overwhelmed by a dense, toxic cloud of hot ash and sulfurous gas.
So you couldn't run because you couldn't see where you were going. Even if you put your hands to your face, it was impossible to see them.
The heat makes it hard to breathe. The pair drop to their knees for air.
He kept on saying that we were going to die.
No, we're not gonna die.
I tried to console him and said to him, no, we're not going to die, we're not going to die.
Meanwhile, survivors gather on a hill 4 kilometers north of the airport. Scientist Rob Watts is among them.
We could see this huge pyroclastic flow literally pulsing around the bend at the bottom of the mountain.
He watches in horror as a superheated tsunami of molten rock and ash stops within 50 meters of the sea at the southern end of the airstrip. just inside the exclusion zone. David Lee captures the scene on his camera.
That's where the pyroclastic flow came to.
By the time I got there, there were people coming from the north knowing that something had happened, but it was something to see, and knowing, all of us knowing, not who and not how many, but we knew that people had been killed.
At 1:10 p.m., a daring helicopter rescue gets underway. Islanders unable to escape by road are stranded in villages northwest of the volcano. But to get to them, the chopper must fly dangerously close to the red-hot billowing ash cloud. One of the first rescues is made from the village of Harris, where a small group of 20 islanders are trapped. Miraculously, Slim Daly is among them.
That thing came down like a bullet.
He is helicoptered to safety. By the end of the day, 4 people are confirmed dead, and a further 17 are missing. The island reels in shock. It's feared many more have not survived the day.
It was a day that shook all of Montserrat, because it's a very small place and everybody's related to somebody and everybody knows everybody, so it was a very tough day.
Immediately after, a team of scientists from the observatory explores why the volcano erupted with such lethal energy. They begin by gathering eyewitness statements. They collect what photographic evidence is available and start to collate data recorded on their instruments. They hope to build a comprehensive sequence of the events that day. The eyewitnesses paint a disturbing picture.
I saw it spreading, and I see the way it fans out. It just bubbles up.
Despite being aware of the dangers, the pyroclastic flow caught islanders within the exclusion zone by surprise. The sheer speed and scale of the avalanche was overwhelming.
As it's coming towards you, it's like big stormy wave, but spreading out. It's spreading wider and wider.
The combination of data recorded at the observatory, photographic evidence, and eyewitness statements points to a complex sequence of blasts that created not one, but 3 pyroclastic flows, with each flow increasing in speed and intensity. 4 days after the eruption, with activity in the volcano subsiding, the team get their first glimpse into the crater. Although it's still hazardous, they fly over the summit of the mountain. What they see confirms their suspicions. The lava dome has collapsed over the north wall of the crater down a valley known as Mosquito Gut. The ejected material covered 4 square kilometers of land, turning north and east of Soufriya Hills into a wasteland. It's also clear the third and final pyroclastic flow traveled faster and spread further than the other 2. In total, it incinerated 150 homes. Using video footage and data recorded on the seismographs, the team calculate this third flow reached speeds of up to 128 kilometers per hour. Such speeds would have allowed little time to escape for those islanders unlucky enough to be in its path. To confirm this theory, the team need to get on the ground. But the disaster zone is still too dangerous to enter. They must wait for the ash and rock to cool. Back at the observatory, they analyze data from the tilt meters that were tracking changes in the inflationary and deflationary cycle of the volcano. They provide an extraordinary insight. Just prior to the eruption, the lava dome expanded massively, swelling over the north rim of the crater. Then, between 12:40 p.m. and 12:50 p.m., the volcano began a rapid deflation. This destabilized the outer layer of the dome. At 12:57 p.m., it collapsed over the North Crater wall, creating the first pyroclastic flow, seen cascading down Mosquito Gut. Nearly 3 minutes later, more volcanic material, this time from deeper inside the lava dome, was ejected, and a second larger avalanche roared down the valley. Then, at 1:08 p.m., the third and most dangerous eruption catapulted a column of ash over 13,500 meters in the air, and a lethal cocktail of red-hot debris flowed down the northern slopes of the mountain. It was the most violent volcanic activity on the island for centuries.
The third pyroclastic flow was the biggest, the most energetic, the fastest. It extended 7 kilometers from the volcano, spread across the coastal plain, burying houses.
Several days after the eruption, the team calculate it's safe for them to enter the disaster zone on foot. As a precaution, they wear protective suits. Much of the ground is still extremely hot. By surveying the scar left in the lava dome and mapping the volume of the flow in the disaster zone, the scientists calculate nearly 6,400,000 cubic meters of lava was ejected down the volcano. It's enough to fill Rome's Colosseum 5.5 times. The scene is like a modern-day Pompeii. The flows were over 600 degrees centigrade. 150 houses lie buried under up to 30 meters of volcanic rock and ash. Asphalt on the roads has melted. Wooden posts and doors have burst into flames. Glass in windows has begun to melt. The cooling lava flow reveals vital clues about the force of the third blast.
Some of the blocks in the pyroclastic flow were enormous, bigger than a house. But one thing we did see on these blocks is friction marks. So it became clear that the blocks weren't rolling down the hill, they were bouncing so hard that they were actually partially melting. So you can imagine these enormous avalanches of bouncing, crashing boulders and rocks.
But this terrifying scene holds the key to a deeper mystery. Why the pyroclastic flow took so many by surprise. The islanders assumed the ash and rock would stay within the valley, as had happened in the preceding months. But they were wrong. After the first and second flows, the valley itself quickly filled with debris. The changing topography allowed the third, more violent flow to ride unimpeded over the path prepared by the other two. As it rampaged down the mountain, gathering momentum, it broke over the sides of the valley and traveled a total of 6.7 kilometers.
What the farmers who had made these plans hadn't anticipated is that the topography that they were familiar with could change so very quickly.
But further investigation of the disaster zone presents the team with a phenomenon rarely witnessed. Above and beyond the destruction left by the heavy deposits of the flow, they find signs of severe scorching spreading out across the plains of Farrell's yard. They realize it's evidence of a pyroclastic surge. As the flow's rock and ash cascades down the mountainside, the rock breaks apart, releasing superheated volcanic gases. This gas rapidly expands and acts as a white-hot hurricane that rides over the heavier debris of the flow itself. It burns everything it touches.
It had melted windows, it had melted paint, it had twisted vegetation and fence posts, it had melted roofing tiles.
The team calculate the surge reached temperatures of 400 degrees centigrade and traveled at speeds of 133 kilometers per hour. But it had another deadly attribute. It behaved in an unpredictable manner.
Pyroclastic flows tend to remain in valleys. However, the surge above that can detach from the avalanche, particularly at bends in the valley.
Halfway down the mountain, the valley the pyroclastic flows traveled in makes a distinctive change in direction. As the surge hit this bend, instead of making the turn, it detached from the pyroclastic flow and headed straight across the farming plains of Farrell's yard. This explains the final mystery. Days after the disaster, the bodies of Harry Lewis's family are discovered. All three were fatally burned, yet they were well beyond the clutches of the pyroclastic flow. Expecting high ground to provide sanctuary, they made a run for it to a small hill just north of where they were farming. But the pyroclastic surge outpaced them.
People thought they could outrun it, people thought they could go uphill to avoid it, but that wasn't the case. The momentum that it builds up coming downhill enabled it to travel uphill. So cars, vehicles, trees can all be moved by pyroclastic surges.
In the intense heat of the surge, the body suffers a neurogenic shock, and the nervous system shuts down. Death is almost instantaneous. In total, 19 people lost their lives on the 25th of June. Yet despite this tragedy, it's remarkable more did not die.
Certainly the events of 25th of June affected many of us very deeply and made us perhaps reconsider our role as scientists, our perspectives, and what it was all about. So many of us became much more interested in the people aspect, if you like, of volcanology.
The scale of the eruption and the devastation caused by its pyroclastic flows took the islanders by surprise. But 10 years earlier, this man predicted a similar scenario. Professor Jeff Wadge worked at the University of West Indies Seismic Research Unit. In 1986, he and colleague Michael Isaacs were commissioned by the United Nations to assess the risks posed by the Montserrat volcano. Over 70% of the 40,000 people killed by pyroclastic flows in the last century have occurred in the Lesser Antilles, the string of Caribbean islands that includes Montserrat. Their research was designed to help the island's government make contingency plans in the event of an eruption. And Wadge visited the authorities to inform them of his work.
I told them what I was doing. I told them that I would be preparing a report on the likely future behaviour of the volcano. I did that, submitted my report, expecting them to take some notice of it.
Professor Wadge and his colleague predicted that Soufriere Hills could erupt with serious consequences, and they advised moving much of Montserrat's infrastructure to the north of the island. Yet their recommendations were not acted upon. Soufriere Hills on the island of Montserrat has erupted violently, resulting in the horrific deaths of 19 islanders. But could more have been done to avoid this tragedy? In the inquest that followed, the jury attributed the deaths to a failure of government to provide adequate infrastructure and farmland for the displaced islanders. But 10 years earlier, Professor Wadge and his colleague Michael Isaacs had advised moving much of Montserrat's infrastructure to the north of the island. In 1987, they published their report on the potential volcanic hazards. It summarized: Soufriere Hills volcano is active and will erupt again. It is a potential threat to many of the people that live in southern Montserrat. They insisted Soufriere Hills must be regarded as an active volcano, and revealed that although it hadn't erupted for centuries, it had displayed seismic activity in the form of earthquakes. These quakes had occurred most recently in the 1930s, and again in the 1960s. This, they argued, was evidence of the volcano trying, but failing, to erupt once every 30 years. Wodge forecast a potentially catastrophic eruption might occur in the mid-1990s, 3 decades after the last intense seismic activity.
The report gave details of several different scenarios. It could range from a relatively small eruption that was contained within the crater to one that would then spill out of the crater and threaten the slopes of Plymouth.
Yet forecasting volcanic eruptions is an imperfect science, and Wodge was only able to attach a 1% chance in the next century to his prediction. Faced with such odds, the government failed to act. But 10 years after the report was published, the professor was proved right. Now, by rewinding the events of that fateful day, we can explain why 19 islanders died. On July the 18th, 1995, Soufriere Hills erupts for the first time in approximately 370 years. The Wodge and Isaacs report forecast the volcano might erupt in the mid-90s. Within months, a lava dome begins to develop on the summit of the volcano. By December 1995, small pyroclastic flows are seen cascading down its flanks. These were anticipated in the report, but the mountain has more in store. June 25th, 1997. 10 hours to disaster. Volatile magma rises rapidly up the magma chamber deep inside the volcano. It places the lava dome under pressure, causing it to inflate and deflate continuously. 7 hours to disaster. Local farmers, including Delia Pond and her family, drive through checkpoints into the exclusion zone. 11 minutes to disaster. The first volcanic eruption occurs. The outer part of the lava dome collapses, and a pyroclastic flow cascades over the northern wall of the crater. 8 minutes to disaster. A second eruption occurs, and a larger avalanche of rock and ash pours down the same valley. Then, at 1:08 p.m., a third massive eruption sends more volatile material racing down the volcano. It spills over the valley walls at speeds of up to 128 kilometers per hour. A pyroclastic surge breaks away from the flow and spreads across farmland. It sweeps through 3 villages, killing 7 people. The heavy debris continues down Mosquito Gut, destroying more villages, claiming a further 12 lives. In just 25 minutes, 19 islanders are dead.
We made a calculated risk, and I just have to give thanks to the Almighty we survived.
1 month later, with the island still reeling from the disaster, one of Professor Wodge's more extreme scenarios comes true. Soufriere Hills blasts another massive pyroclastic flow down its scorched slopes. It hits the abandoned capital Plymouth and literally wipes it off the map. There was no further loss of life, but it could have been very different. Had the volcano erupted this violently initially, it could have killed thousands. Soufriere Hills has been active for more than 10 years. Today, just under 4,500 proud islanders still live on Montserrat, including Delia Pond, Slim Daly, and David Lee. But they are cornered in the north of this Caribbean paradise. Half of Montserrat is uninhabitable and is expected to remain so for a decade.